Hi, David.
Hi, Sophie.
So I'm talking to you from the middle of rainy Sheffield, and you, I think, are out in the gorgeous Peak District somewhere, aren't you?
Yeah, still rainy, unfortunately. That's that's our spring into summer this year.
Yeah,
It's
I
taking its
know.
time, isn't it?
And we're talking because we've been talking for a while about the idea of you running a resilience workshop at Harlem Works. And I wonder if you could just say a little bit about what you do currently with Men Up North and the food hall or food works, and then we'll talk a bit about resilience. So what's your current
Yeah,
role?
it's the food hall, which is a
Food hall, that's
a
right.
food charity, and a social cafe where it's a pay as you feel cafe that we operate using a lot of sort of waste food and past its sell by date sort of food, really. So trying to reduce food waste and food inequality as well. But that's operated as more of a food bank through this pandemic. So I work part time for them, for that organisation. My role is as a wellbeing worker, which is quite a wide remit, really. It's a new role for that organisation. So it's about developing wellbeing interventions, whether that's physical or mental, for some of the people who access the social cafe, and trying to support them to improve their circumstances, really. The work I do for Men Up North, which is, again, it's a charity that is, I guess, dedicated to improving men's mental health, but also challenging stereotypes around masculinity, trying to, these are overarching goals about reducing male suicide. It's about encouraging men to talk, really, and that men have an emotional world, really, and about promoting that.
How does resilience play into your work? Why is resilience something you're interested in?
I suppose I became interested in resilience partly through my own history, and partly through studies. I have a degree in psychology and a master's degree in addictions and dependency, and I worked in the field of dependency for many years. But resilience I became interested in just, I guess, through personal observations over the years, really, about how, and through my own life experience, about how what it is about some people that seem to cope better, or to manage better, or to not be affected as much by life events, and we all face life events, and we all face challenges throughout our lives.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's about and finding out, I suppose, once doing that research and looking into happiness and all those sorts of what gives people, brings people joy in their lives, and they're very interconnected, but happiness and joy can be more fleeting. I think resilience is something, and you find out once you look at the research, and it's all about strategies. It's about ways of being that people employ that help them to move on from trauma or difficulties in their life, and it's also looking at research as well around post-traumatic stress disorder, and how that can be or trauma situations, how some people can develop and grow as an individual from them, and sometimes about how they approach and how they view things that happen, rather than the fact that things happen, because that's inevitable, really. That's part of life.
So if resilience is something you can, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that resilience is something you can improve at in yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about strategies. It's not something inherent to particular individuals, although there are things that affect how resilient we are, or how resilient we become, and that's things like parenting, our upbringing. There are some inherent personality factors that, whether you become a glass half full or an optimist or pessimist, but those are not those traits are not fixed. Those are things we all know about. Uh, Now more about neuroplasticity and how we can impact and affect our experience of life by the things that we do, and even the way that we think and view situations, really. And a lot of those things are habits of ways of thinking or ways of being, and sometimes it's we don't even recognize that we're in those patterns, really.
So that is very hopeful, really. What you're saying is that you can go from a situation that feels like life's against you, your glass is definitely half empty, and there's a way with support you can kind of switch to seeing more opportunities and seeing your glass is half full.
Absolutely. Sometimes, for instance, if it's habitual ways of thinking, it's not something that happens overnight, but it's something that we can. It's about retraining. I'm also a life coach as well, so some of that stuff I utilize in, looking at people's how they function and ways of how they can change the way they operate.
And
that might be more functional.
From reading some of what you've written, I know that living in the Peak District and being close to the outdoors and having all that wonderful access that we do living in Sheffield and places on the edge of the Peak District is part of your personal resilience strategy. And I think it's part of a lot of people that live in Sheffield who walk and run and cycle and climb. And, there's a lot of people here who really value our access to the Peak District. But I guess everybody's just needs to build or would benefit from building their own personal resilience strategy, whatever it is. Not everybody wants to get muddy going out running and cycling in the rain, but
absolutely not. It's about finding your finding your passion and whatever that might be. But for me, that those things, how that helps me with my resilience is some of those things that I'm involved in are a form of, it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but it's about mindfulness as well. Sometimes it's about coming out of our head and being active and doing things that, getting involved in a community is part, or being involved in your community is, or some community of some sort is part of a resilience, a support network, developing those sorts of things, really. That's where all the research points to people who remain resilient have those sorts of things, and that can be a process, for somebody who doesn't have that support network. It can take some time, but it's eminently possible. And my own personal experience is of that, of doing that, really.
So if we were to do as we're planning to do a lunchtime talk about resilience, you would be up for sharing some of that with anybody that came along who is interested in how to develop their own resilience strategies?
Of course, yeah, to be I'd be quite interested in their experience as well, about what helps them to remain resilient, or challenges that they've had in their lives. And you say a talk, but it'd be it wouldn't be a lecture. It's about
a conversation.
Hopefully, a bit interactive.
Okay, that's great. I mean, I'm particularly interested in resilience because I think that people that run small businesses, and we have a lot of those at Harlem Works, I think it can be a very, very challenging role, and often people are running them on their own. And I think this idea of resilience crosses over into how to withstand all the different stresses that you have as a small business owner, as much as in people's personal lives. So I think it's a really valid topic for us to
absolutely
to explore.
It goes yeah, it goes across all those things, and particularly, I think we've all had our challenges over the last year, and I mean, my personal viewpoint is that we're going through a lot of challenges as a species, over we are going in terms of climate change. There's lots of uncertainty about the future and about our roles and how we fit in, and I think that's something that lots of people are experiencing, and those sorts of feelings can also produce anxiety, really, and sometimes resilience is about focusing on the things that you do have control over, and how do we manage that, yeah. But definitely relevant for anybody who's running a small business, I would say. But I think resilience is relevant for everybody. That's fine.
Well, that's great, David. Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to having you talk here. I'll definitely be in the front line of the audience having that conversation with you.
Very much. Nice to speak to you, Sophie.
Thanks very
Let's
much.
hope, we can get some interest